This is a Flying Cow production.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the FCL Flashback here on the Flying Cow Network. I, of course, am your host, the Flying Cow himself, Clay Johnson, and the FCL Flashback is, of course, the show where we talk to people who took part in the FCL, the first class league, and just kind of, chat and hang out for a little bit. And here with me today is none other than the sinister James Shimo.
It's good to see you, man. It's been a hot minute, but boy,
I know.
I mean, we've done the occasional thing on your channel with the movie battle, whatever you've got going on, but we haven't really just sat and had a conversation in quite some time.
Yeah, it's been too long. I mean, honestly, that's one of the reasons that I decided to do this was because, ever since the FCL, I just haven't kept in contact with some of those people as much as I would like,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's unfortunate because I loved my time in the FCL. I loved talking to those people. I loved hanging out with them. And so I thought that this would be a good opportunity to, not just, get together and hang out and talk, but also, remember the FCL, because as I've said before, the FCL never got kind of its big send-off that the Schmodown did. And so, this is kind of my way of giving the FCL its just due. And I will say, if you don't mind talking for a second, I'm realizing that my Ethernet cable is not plugged in, so people might see me as choppy. So give me just a second, feel free to tell the people anything that you want.
Yeah, sure. No, and Clay's absolutely right. Like, unfortunately, the FCL, we kind of ended up kind of like quietly just disappearing, kind of like the first original iteration of the XFL. We just kind of we had our first season and things went great, and there was all kinds of excitement and everything for us, especially amongst the competitors for season 2 and trying to get more stuff going and building it out and just really expanding the brand. And then it just kind of dropped, and it wasn't just because they were planning to drop the FCL, but because the Schmodown itself was planning to just discontinue and everything. So it's unfortunate that we ended up getting canceled that soon. But at the same time, I'm grateful for the time that I spent there, the people that I've met, the community that I was able to be a part of at a whole different level than I used to be, because I'd been a fan of the Schmodown for years and years and years. But then to actually be a part of the operation and to kind of get a peek behind the curtain, if you will, and really be a part of it and to say, hey, I got this opportunity, and to be one of the few to be able to say, I got in on the ground floor of this thing. Granted, the supernova faded out way quicker than we wanted to, but at least I got that opportunity. At least we had that experience. So
Agreed. It was a lot of fun. And, you mentioned the backstage stuff. Other than, actually playing the matches, that was some of the most fun.
Oh, yeah.
Was hanging out backstage. Honestly, I would, when I was the main event, I would almost always come in like at the very beginning and just kind of hang out. I'm just like, I'm just going to hang out with you guys. This is fun.
Yeah, no, the conversations that would spark up with Dwayne and PLD, Brad, Steph, and just anybody who happened to be in the call at the time. Yeah, if there were tapes of any of that stuff, my God, there would be comedy gold. But yeah, it was something else. And again, just over too soon, unfortunately. But the memories are always going to be there. The fact that we actually managed to put our stamp on something like this is great. And down the line, who knows what could happen?
Yeah. I mean, maybe somebody sees this and was like, "Hey, that sounds like a good idea. Maybe bring some of these people back and do some more stuff." Yeah.
Yeah. We gotta
but-
have our own Tony Khan kind of situation. Christian Harloff was the Vince McMahon. We'll have a Tony Khan come up with something else. Something.
Yeah. Whatever needs to happen. So, I mean, obviously, James, you were. You started pretty early on with the FCL.
Yeah.
I'm sure you told the story on some after shows, but go ahead and just kind of give us like a background of like how you got into the FCL, up until like being called for your first match. Like, were you in the Schmodown draft like a lot of the other people were?
Yeah. So I sent in an audition tape for the draft, thinking, this will be a fun little thing, but there's no way that anything's ever going to come out of this. And then, I saw my name on the draft list. I was like, holy crap, like this is actually happening. And I'm like,
sure.
And then, the FCL thing kind of, obviously I didn't get called. And like during the whole, the draft portion and even before that, like I talked with Winston like before, because he put like a thing out on Instagram. It's like, hey, if you're, want to do this, set up a time or this, that, or the other, let me know. And we kind of did that. The only other person that I really talked to was Craig, was the Barbarian. And and he really mentored me. He was the one who really kept in contact with me leading up to the draft and kind of cued me in on things that were going on. And in fact, at the end of the draft, like those last kind of supplemental picks after the show had gone off the air, he had mentioned they were planning on bringing me in like for the Schmodown proper. But Christian kind of pulled Dagnino aside and said, look, we got to have some female representation in the Finstock Exchange. We can't just let you have nothing but dudes. So he's like, hey, don't worry. I've put your name in with Brad, PLD for the FCL. They're going to give you an email. They're going to give you a call. So don't panic. We can bring you in maybe later or like anywhere down the line. Obviously that didn't end up happening, but Craig was really great about staying in communication with me, checked in on me after my first couple matches, gave me congratulations. So I owe a lot to Barbarian for that one. So then after the paperwork and everything was filled out, matter of fact, I actually almost ended up debuting before my first actual match because they were worried that potentially maybe somebody wouldn't be able to meet their schedule. And they're like, well, now we got to bring somebody in last minute. So they said, hey, we may need you for this. Go ahead and cut this little promo on your opponent. Cause it was the first match that Devon Stewart ended up having. I was almost and I cut this whole promo about him being like the Marty.
Either way, you were going to play somebody who used to be in the Schmodown.
Yeah, one way or the other. But his originally scheduled opponent ended up coming in, and that worked out fine. And then obviously I had my match with Kaylin. Kaylin's great, super sweetheart. It was so nice to just talk with her.
Yeah, I was disappointed that she never came back because I think that was her one and only match.
It was, I believe it was. And sometimes schedules don't work out, and people's priorities change. So I mean, it is a shame. You're right, because I think she kind of disappeared a little bit after the whole Scream Queen thing in the Schmodown, and then because I know her partner, Haley Fouch, I think was the one who kept going on. And she just, and it may just have been a thing where she had so many other things going on that she didn't have time for it, So I don't know what the story is. I hope she's doing well. And then immediately right after that, David ended up having technical problems where I think the power had gone out in his neighborhood and they didn't have any idea when it was going to be coming back on. So we worked it in as, I cut the power to his house and this, that, and the other, me with my, sinister little action. And that, again, me just dropping the line of the Sinister Syndicate. Like that was just an off the cuff thing that I just said in the heat of the moment. And Brad just after the stream just says, hey, keep that idea in mind because that sounds interesting. And I'm like, all right.
Well, let's not glance past this because I mean, like you said, you had your debut match against Kaylin Corrigan. Is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And she was able to pull that out, but you immediately
Yeah.
played the very next match. I believe you were the only person in I mean, I think
Yeah.
FCL Schmodown anything history to
Go
play
wire.
a match
No, actually,
back to back.
I would clarify that because Dan
Okay.
did that once because Dan had a title defense and then Sam immediately because of
True.
his
True.
free for all. So I think
Okay.
Dan and I are the only two who've ever done that.
That's nice. That's nice company to be in. Sir.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, with the GOAT, Dan Murrell, Dangerous Dan Murrell. I mean, to have my name anywhere near associated with him is just, more than I could have ever hoped for.
But to immediately get the opportunity to avenge your loss.
Yeah, that was huge.
And remind me, who did you play in that second match?
It was Sonny. I played him in
It was
singles.
Sonny. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you did play Sonny. Okay.
Yeah, I did play him, just not in like I would have loved to have played him in Star Wars to really
Right.
test his knowledge and this, that, and the other.
Right.
Because, and Sonny's a great guy. I know he and Kat, they've got their own thing going on.
Yeah.
And, great people have nothing but kind things to say about those two. They're awesome.
Agreed.
But yeah, like just going wire to wire, going from the first match and then immediately into the next, especially after taking a loss, I'm like, okay, the worst case scenario, losing my debut happened. There's nowhere to go but up from here. And thankfully I was able to pull out the win. So
yeah,
again, there was a lot of nerves that kind of went with that first match as well. But at the same time, being someone from a theater background, like nerves don't really get to me. I use them as fuel rather than let them paralyze me half the time.
Right.
So, it was just a matter of, okay, refocus, ignore whatever happened before. Don't fixate on anything. Just focus on the here and the now, and managed to pull off the win. Went 1-1 in my first ever outing in the FCL.
Your first episode. I mean, I will say, correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I've watched either of those matches, but if I remember correctly, you didn't have a bad showing in that first match. I think it really just came down to the third round.
Yeah, both matches came down to the third round. The first match, I think I was down by 2. Okay. I can't remember because I can't remember if Kaylin got the bonus question at first round to go into round 2.
I do remember that she actually looked rather impressive.
Oh yeah, no. But I think because there were only like 1 or 2 questions I think I missed in that very first round, and then I know I cleaned house in round 2. But then round 3 was that Days of Thunder question at the very end in order to keep me in there. And I was just, Michael Rooker. I should have known that. I should have watched that movie. Because I love Michael Rooker. Like, I love him as Yondu, obviously. Loved him in Mallrats. Like, if you've never watched that Kevin Smith movie, he's hilarious in that. Okay. So, definitely something I eventually put on my watch list and everything. But just in the moment, it was just a blind spot that I was just like, and in the moment I'm thinking, okay, Days of Thunder, Tom Cruise, who in the ever-loving, universe would have possibly been in that movie with him around that time? And I just threw out Val Kilmer because I literally had no clue.
Yeah. No, I mean that's tough.
It was rough.
Yeah. But yeah, so you have your debut and then your follow-up match immediately after. I do want to shout out the Mystical One is in the chat.
What's up, Brennan? Good to see you, man.
Hope you're doing well. But you had your first 2 singles matches immediately. You're tied 1-1. How many matches total did you play? Do you remember?
Yeah. So like I said, I had those first 2 right off the bat. And then the next match I had was with David, because obviously that was the storyline and everything. And then I had
Jindoyan, by the way.
Yeah, David Jindoyan.
Because there were a couple other Davids.
David,
I was like, I don't remember you playing David Campbell.
No, David Jindoyan. But no, I would have loved to have played David. Like, he and I actually exchanged DMs on Twitter, and we were like, like we wanted to do something with like his whole European invasion.
The personalities
alone, it would have been great.
Yeah, the personalities alone. I have to say, just because we haven't mentioned it yet, your promos were so good. I mean, just kind of you and I have talked a little bit about it, but kind of talk a little bit about like your thought processes when it comes to promos. Like, where did you get your style from? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So, a lot of different ideas went into the concept of the Sinister one, because being a pro wrestling fan, I've always loved like the dark, the creepy, the kind of the manipulators, and the guys who weren't over the top and in your face and yelling and screaming and ranting and raving. Granted, I love the Macho Man Randy Savage. I thought he was always great.
Yeah.
But the ones that I really gravitated towards were guys like Jake the Snake Roberts, the ones who were reserved and quiet and told you all about it. But again,
they made you lean in.
Exactly. The saying that Jake used to say was, I learned a long time ago that if a man has enough power, he can speak softly and everyone will listen. And, and I firmly took that to heart with my promos, because there were hardly any times that I started screaming or getting intense. Like, I would have an intense look on my face, but the volume in my voice never went up or down, because I wanted you to pay attention. I wanted you to lean in. And so there was stuff like that. Guys like Bray Wyatt. Thank you, Brennan. I appreciate that. I certainly don't know if that's the case. I think there are at least a handful of people better than me. But
I mean, I wouldn't say better. I think there were a lot of elite promo people in the FCL. I think you were definitely among them.
Right. Yeah. I would say I wouldn't put myself at the very top of the mountain, but I would put myself definitely in that rarefied air, if you will.
Yeah.
But no, like I always loved coming up with promos, and I never scripted anything. Like, I just thought it. I'm like, okay, what would I say if this was like, a big fight kind of UFC, WWE kind of situation, and like, what are the points about their personality, or what kind of things could I call upon? Because like I said, before, when I was planning on going up against Devon before his original opponent worked out, like I had talked about how he was always the other guy with every team that he was in, whether it was the Kingsman or whether it was Inky and the Brain. He was always the also ran, or the this and that, and just like being the Marty Jannetty of the team and this and that. So I literally that's literally
I'm sure you were going to actually reference. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So, and unfortunately, I'm so mad that promo never made air, because I thought it was great. But it's just those little things, like with like embracing the dark side stuff, the filter on my promos and everything. I just wanted it to be atmospheric, to be that sinister, that nefarious kind of feel to it. And again, I just I think back to like a lot of other characters, like like Grima Wormtongue from the Lord of the Rings, and like those slimy, those just the guys you want to punch in the face anytime they open their mouth,
Sure.
And and judging by the chat that would go by during most of my matches, I think I got that exact effect. So, but no, it was
I have to say, James, it's a rare person that sees someone like Cream of Wormtongue and says, I want to be like that
guy. Well, you take inspiration where you can find it,
Yeah.
But no, that was my goal. Is I wanted to be the guy who just, if we had ever been able to do live events, like I wanted to walk down the aisle and I wanted to have like people ready to punch me, because I was just that obnoxious.
You can tell there were definitely those of us in the FCL that were playing for the live event eventuality.
Oh yeah, that was always in the back of my mind.
Andrew Furtado, David Campbell, I'm lots and lots more. But you could tell just the way that we were playing. We were like biding our time. We were waiting. We were pitching ourselves for that moment.
Yeah, like I wanted to be like the most despised heel in all of the FCL, and unfortunately, I think Flaus got me just by that much, because of the way he won the title.
I was about to say, just because he was holding a title that he didn't technically earn.
Yeah. So,
but yeah. Here we go.
Brennan's comment there in the chat. Wow. Thanks. I guess, But yeah, no, like that was my whole thing. Is I wanted people to be genuinely either they wanted to punch me in the face or they were so uncomfortable around me. They like when we came down that aisle, if we ever had a live event, they'd like take a step to the side just to kind of not be anywhere near me. Like that is the kind of reaction I had been really wanting from the chat. And again, going back and rewatching through a lot of those Twitch chats and just seeing anytime I pop up on screen, just the uggs, not this guy again, and all the other kind of comments, I'm just like,
right.
I did my job.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the whole point. I do want to ask you, I posted one of your promos from an earlier tweet.
Yeah, I saw that.
The music behind, is that your music or did you get that from
I was say that was something that Dwayne or PLD found to use for me. Sure. Yeah, but no, like it fit the mood that we were going for because I know that was like the music that I had for like those first few matches before they just stopped playing it for whatever reason. But you know, but it was like I said, I loved that music. I loved just the vibe that it gave. You know, and then hearing it again twice in a row for that first match, and then just the wait a second, we've heard that music already. What gives? And just the way things worked out was just great. And again, just the black shirts and everything, and it was all part of the aesthetic, all part of the vibe that I was trying to maintain. You know, and you know, I love playing a bad guy. You know, for whatever reason, like it's
fun.
Yeah, it's fun to play against type. It really is because honestly, you chat with me, you know, we go to the movies or, you know, hang out or whatever. I like to think I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever run into. Like I'm
you're a very pleasant fellow.
I try to be anyway, but no, like I wanted to be the biggest prick that you could possibly meet. And I even told this to Brad, like the very first thing is like, if I had my way, I would be the MJF of this entire thing. And he's like, I don't know. I think he crosses the line just a little bit. I'm like, yeah, I know we can't get away with a handful of things because of sponsors, but like that's the level of heat that I wanted with the audience.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I will say I always saw you more as like going for like a creep factor. I mean, like, you know, there's definitely some heat in there, but I never saw you as like, you know, the jerk, the asshole, you know. I mean, you know, you have dark, sinister, you know, plans, so there's some of that built in. But your whole thing with the Sinister Syndicate was chaos,
right? Just coming in. It's like what's the line that Ryan Reynolds has in Deadpool? I don't take the shits, I just disturb them. that was pretty much my mantra, I guess, as the leader of the Sinister Syndicate, as it were.
Right. And as you mentioned earlier, that was really just a line that you threw out. It didn't have really any intention behind it.
The only intention I had really had for that line was the Sinister Syndicate would be what I would call my fans. You know, people who decided to support me. But then Brad just says, hang on to that idea because we might be able to use that for something. I'm like, okay. And then obviously that's how you and I first got kind of paired together, and then obviously bringing Maxwell in later.
Which unfortunately he was unveiled as part of the Sinister Syndicate during Warfare, the last
the very end of it. I'm just like
thing that showed,
and just such a missed opportunity. But you know, like you know, just there was so much more that we could have done with that idea, and just with the FCL as a whole, there was just so much more entertainment value that could have been mined from it. But you know, things happen, plans change, and you know, I mean, if nothing else, if anybody decides to put a league together, you know, elsewhere, and we all three decide we want to compete again, maybe we can pick up where we're left off, you know?
Yeah, maybe we can actually get Mad Cow going.
There you go. Yeah, Team Mad Cow.
I've got to. Okay, so you know, I want definitely to talk about, you know, what plans we might have had for the future and things like that. But let's kind of get back to, you know, your matches. I mean, I think we ended up deciding you had what, like 6 or 7 matches?
I believe 7, because like I said, I had the 2 my first night, then David Jandoian, then I played another singles against Travis. I remember because I
Tra-
had
oh, that's right. Yes.
yeah,
yes.
and then I had my 2 in Inner Geekdom, Elena and Wingblade, and then I had
Wingblade.
my 1 against our friend in the chat, Brennan. So yeah, I
Right.
had about 7 of them, and
Okay.
and believe it or not, that was my first and only Star Wars match was against Brennan, and they could not have put me up against a stronger opponent. I was like,
right.
I was
yeah.
like, I was on the back foot at least a couple different times during that match, and
Yeah,
it all came down to that last question.
When you said that, I was like, I could have sworn you had one other Star Wars match.
I wish that I had. Like I said, I wish I could have played Sonny. I wish I could have played, Reifenberg. I wish I could have played with a bunch of those guys.
Yeah.
Because they truly know Star Wars in, out, backwards and forwards, every which way but loose. So again, going up against Brennan was great. But part of me really would have loved to have been in that Star Wars title match, but to have been felled by the guy who eventually won that match, I can't.
I was about to say, sadly, your match with Brennan was closer than his title match.
I mean,
no shade at all. Sometimes you just get questions you don't know.
It's
I
just
totally get it.
The way the chips fell,
Yeah, absolutely. But so I mean, as we mentioned, you had your third match was that blow off with Jindoyan, which was really the blow off of your first storyline.
Yeah, my first real feud. Yeah, I mean, we had thoughts to where he and I could have maybe ran it by again, maybe this obsession comes to a thing. It's because I think he and I had pitched it together.
Honestly, I thought that Jindoyan versus the Syndicate was going to be a thing because he and I were trading. We're trading.
Shots on Twitter.
Shots on Twitter here and there, and I was like, this would be great. Of course, I was hoping some of it would happen in season 2, but yeah, I mean, I thought I was hoping we were going to keep that going because I mean, you ended up winning that match against
by the skin of my teeth because the last question was about Manchurian Candidate and he had said Bone Collector, which was so close. And I had no idea whether he was right or whether he was wrong. I had no clue. I was just sitting there, my heart racing, and they said my music started playing. And I was like, oh my God, I got him. And it was because I was worried for a second, but no, there was so much else we could have done because he and I had this whole idea of he keeps going, he picks up a few more wins, or even if he starts getting losing again, and he finally says, you know what, I want Shimo one more time. He's still in my head. I don't know why.
Yeah, and
I would have said something to Brad along the lines of, look, I have no reason to face David again. I already beat him. There's nothing left. But I'm a businessman, so I'll make you a deal. If I beat David again, then I get inserted into a title match or something like that. But
sure,
I'm saying not only that, I would say, here, let's sweeten the deal a little bit. Jindoyan beats me, great. He goes on into a title match or this, that, or the other. Mm-hmm. But I beat him. He has to join the Sinister Syndicate. He has to serve me, the people that he's the guy that he's had the biggest problem with. And then we had 2 different ideas of where to go with it because it could have been the begrudging kind of guy who eventually gets converted, or he and I were working together the whole time, depending on how we wanted to work things out. He was the secret third or fourth member.
I mean, I'm thinking, you say that, I immediately, we're both old wrestling guys. I go to Rey Mysterio in the original LWO.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can see exactly where you're coming from with that. But no, it could have been the idea of hey, you take the dive for me this time around by, saying your power is out or this, that, or the other to give me this other opportunity. I intentionally lose to him to get him into a title opportunity. It could have been there were a number of different angles that we could have gone with it. And I was just there was so many missed opportunities and so much because there's another thing, and I'll get into it a little bit later, that almost came up with me and Travis after our match had already taken place.
Right.
But I'll get into that a little bit more here in just a second.
Well, because here's the thing. Even though, you had that thing with Jindoyan early on and he was your third match, it felt like you two were connected from then on. Like, I don't know if it was him bringing you up in post match or you bringing him up, but it seemed like you two never could shake each other in one way or another.
No, like
I'm
every time,
I'm sure part of that was by design.
Oh yeah. No, because like every time I would have a match or I would say something on Twitter about stuff that was going on, he'd always chime in about the syndicate this, the syndicate that. That was his thing, and it was his way of keeping the thing going and really just angling for that story to continue. And I'm like, you know what? And he and I talked about it. Like, he and I would exchange messages every once in a while, just like, hey man, how you doing? You get another match yet? Oh yeah, I got this going on, or this, that, or the other. We like organize study stuff or anything like that. So, but again, David's a great guy. Had nothing but fun playing against him. I had nothing but fun, bouncing off of his over the top gimmick with mine and this, that. I think just that idea of the Survivor versus the Sinister one, I think just that clash of personalities, if you will, just it was a license to print money, metaphorically speaking,
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it was the like I said, it was one of the earlier rivals in the FCL, and it sticks out to me. It wasn't one that was just kind of there. I remember it. But yeah, so that was your third match. Your fourth match was
I would say my fourth singles match was Travis. My very next match after David, I believe, was with Elena.
Okay. So you had your
game against
IG
Elena
match
Jordan.
against Elena Jordan. Okay.
Yeah.
Which I mean, everybody talks about either really wanting to play Elena or loving playing her. So
it's a ridiculous amount of fun to play against Elena. The bit, and I know they brought it up on this week in the FCL. Like, they had no idea like how I could have kept my composure during most of that match, just because of the puns and all the jokes and everything. And I'm just like, it's adopting that mentality of like, this is a shoot. Like, I'm not here to crack jokes. I'm not here to, and again, I said as much in the pre-match interview. It's like, I'm here to win matches. I'm here to win championships, not be Mark Ellis's opening act at the Laugh Factory. And you could hear, and the funniest thing is they didn't mute Elena when I said that line, because you could hear her laughing off screen. And I remember, like, that was even funnier because there was an exchange going on Twitter where after like the promo video for our match went up, like somebody was saying, rooting for Elena, I'm predicting her victory, this, that, and the other. And I just, my only reply was a GIF from The Princess Bride where it's Wesley just saying, get used to disappointment.
Yeah.
And she even replied to it saying, I shouldn't be laughing so hard at this because it's at my expense, but damn, that's funny.
Yeah.
I'm just but no, Elena's great. Her personality is infectious. And a little known fact about that match, I did mention this before on one previous episode, but the day before that match took place, my dad had actually gotten rushed to the hospital with a heart attack.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, like I didn't know what was going on. My head was in a really messed up space. So to be able to do as well as I did to compartmentalize and put in the performance that I did was nothing short of a miracle in my estimation. The fact that I could have, been able to separate the personal from the game and actually be able to do that. But no, and I even mentioned that after we got off the stream, and like Brad and Steph and everybody was just so nice. So, offering condolences or offering their well wishes and this, that, and the other. So, I will, and Elena especially was so gracious about the whole thing. So you will never hear me say a bad word about Elena Jordan. I don't think I even know anybody who would ever say a bad word about Elena.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't really think, I mean, like I said, anybody that has mentioned her has always mentioned her in very positive, glowing terms. Yeah. So, I mean, definitely, I really want to have her on at some point.
Absolutely.
I actually had considered inviting her on for this episode, but you and I had to push back. So I was just like, let's Yeah, and honestly, this is a busy month for me. I'm not sure when the next
No, and
episode's
believe
gonna
me,
be,
just personally, yeah, I've got a lot of busy stuff going on. So the fact that we
yeah.
were even able to fit this in is a miracle in and of itself.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally get it. But yeah, so you had that match with Elena. You ended up going perfect in IG, really kind of makes you look very impressive in IG. And in fact, I think a lot of people, had you had already kind of exalted you as, the possible FCL IG champ.
Believe me,
Eventually.
you're not the only one. Like I'd started thinking, you know, you never want to just assume that you're going to be in that position because that's when you get cocky. That's when you start to kind of rest on your laurels or this, that, or the other. But I'd always like the one thing I had always seen myself doing in the FCL, if we had had the time, was becoming the Inner Geekdom champion because that's my bread and butter. That's where my entire fandom of film comes from, is those nerd properties, those geeky categories. And the match that I had with Wingblade after that obviously didn't go the way that I wanted it to, and a lot of people were calling him the uncrowned Inner Geekdom champion and this, that, and the other. And I thought that was a great thing. And the one thing that I wanted to do, and I like I said, I brought this up because to me, one of the things I really, really wanted to do if we had gone any further with the FCL was to kind of elevate that Inner Geekdom championship almost to rival the singles title. Because what I wanted to do, the one thing I wanted to do was, I've said to myself, pitch this to Brad and see where it goes. I wanted to make just an all Inner Geekdom episode of the FCL. And I wanted to do a gauntlet match.
Yeah. I think you and Wingblade had very similar ideas.
Yeah, because think about it. Just one, like I'd already proven I could go back to back. So just imagine one guy starts, next guy comes in, whoever's left standing faces the next, and then the next, and then the next, until there's nobody else left standing. Like, to really put that IG title over as the title that a lot of people want to go after, I thought there was no better way to do it. And you had guys like me, you had Wingblade, you had Elena, you had Kat, you had, all these other kind of people who could have easily fit into that idea, or even do like a four corners match or something. But I wanted to really solidify the IG division. That was my goal. If we had continued with season 2, I wanted to pour my entire heart and soul into Inner Geekdom and really show how much dedication those films really take for competitors to really be considered great at them.
Yeah, because I mean, I had a couple of IG matches as well. I was 1-1 as also. I never had a perfect match, but yeah, I mean, there were definitely, when I got the list, I was just like, yeah, there's an entire category that I've only seen like one of these movies.
Yeah, there's so much. And it's so in depth because you got to figure at some point, video game movies probably would have gotten added to the list. So you figure now with especially with the like Super Mario Brothers movie, or even just before that, like Detective Pikachu, or even the Sonic the Hedgehog 2, like both of those movies.
Yeah.
The quality of video game movies has actually gone up a lot to where if you go back and you watch, it's not the Uwe Boll cash grab, vortex, money laundering vortex or whatever kind of tax loophole nonsense he had going on with a lot of those.
Right.
But, and thankfully I can say that because I'm not Jeff Snyder. I'm not a critic that he's going to knock out. But yeah, if you've ever watched that video, oh my God. But
I've not,
there's so many different ways. Cause again, what makes something a geek property or something that falls into Inner Geekdom, Right. A lot of people argue James Bond doesn't belong in there, but there probably are people who take as much dedication in reading the James Bond books and watching the James Bond movie series as anybody does watching Lord of the Rings or Transformers or Star Wars or Star Trek or anything like that.
Yeah.
So there's an argument to be made. Granted, do I think I'm going to say, to me, what makes something Inner Geekdom is, can you see people walking around Comic-Con dressed that way?
Sure.
Everybody walks around in stuff from like video games or cartoons or anime or comic books or this or that. Nobody's walking around just like James Bond.
No.
That's just nothing against James Bond. Like, I like those movies enough, at least a handful of them. But, it just doesn't fit that niche to me. That's not to say it doesn't qualify for somebody else. And if it does, in your opinion, more power to you.
Yeah. I will say there was a point at which, this was before the inner geekdom in the Schmodown even got to the level of difficulty that it got. Because honestly, I wasn't even going to try the inner geekdom until I saw the first couple inner geekdom matches in the FCL. And I was like, I can play at that level.
Yeah.
But,
but then you look at the last question I got against Wingblade, and I'm just like, what in the name of Merlin are you talking about?
We're going to talk about that because I've already mentioned that question a couple of times on previous ones. But, I actually had an idea at one point. I was like, wouldn't it be a great IG heel to come in and basically be, come in, just kind of, play and just go lights out, and then basically announce that you're going to burn the entire division to the ground, and that your first step in doing that, because like the idea, kind of like with Nick Harley as the spoiler.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah, when you
come in and basically say these movies suck. I'm going to burn this division to the ground, kind of thing. And your first act is trying to get Twilight on the wheel.
Oh God!
Added to the inner geekdom,
because my God,
honestly, nobody can give a good reason as to why it shouldn't have been in inner geekdom, except for the fact that people didn't like the movies. But honestly, they added a bunch of films that people did not like.
There's a ton of movies, and like I guarantee I've still got the list here somewhere, and I'm like, nobody likes that movie. Why is that even in here? Like the fact that if they had continued with that, the fact that Morbius would be required viewing.
Yep.
Anyway,
I watched AVP Requiem.
Oh,
that film is actively repellent. That is the best way I can describe that film.
Yeah,
it's almost like it's trying to get you to turn it off.
Yeah, to me,
there's nothing pleasant about that movie.
Almost the equivalent of that, in my estimation, would be, again, pro wrestling analogy here. There was a point in Monday Night Raw where, or even in pop culture, where Donald Trump and Rosie O'Donnell were going at each other with the whole apprentice thing. And they put a match on Monday Night Raw. It was, quote unquote, Donald Trump versus, quote unquote, Rosie O'Donnell. I went back and watched it a while ago.
Oh, why?
Why? I'll explain why. There's a channel that I follow that is doing a series called The Worst Match Ever, where they're literally going back through and watching fan suggestions to find the worst match of all time, and by extension, the best worst match of all time.
Okay.
So, I was just following along with what they were watching so I could see what they were reacting to. And it's about maybe 8 minutes that feels like 80.
Oh.
It is so bad and so cringe. Yeah. And this was done for an audience of one. And that one was Vince McMahon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. But no, like, there were so many different things that in those inner geekdom categories that just are like, you kind of cock your head to the side and go, huh? Yeah. Like, really? They're putting that in there? And then it's just, like, to me, like, this is one thing that I did personally when because I used to run Inner Geekdom in a fan league.
Sure.
I used to be the one writing the questions, doing the research, this, that, and the other.
Right.
I threw View Askew in there. The View Askew universe with Kevin Smith. Because to me,
because they talk a lot about the geek movies. And stuff
not just the fact that they talk a lot about, geek content and things like that in them, but the fact is like Kevin Smith does have that dedicated of a fan base to where this would fit, and I'm just like, so to me, it was perfectly viable. I threw Pirates of the Caribbean into my Inner Geekdom stuff too, before the Schmodown. I'm like, you have no idea how many times somebody will walk through Comic-Con or wherever dressed as Jack Sparrow, So absolutely. It completely fit in my estimation.
Yeah.
You know, personally, like they probably could have put Disney in there as its own category too. Because let's face it, there are some you can speak from experience. There are dedicated Disney fans out there who will obsess over the.
I had an
tiniest little
entire
minutia.
league dedicated to it. Yeah.
Exactly. Which, by the way, if you ever expand to include either Marvel or Star Wars, count me in. But in any case, you know, it's just, you know, and again, we are getting a little off track here, but the fact of the matter is that just inner geekdom means different things to different people, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the best way to make a division out of all these different definitions is just find the biggest common denominators among each one and just include them. If there are a couple of outliers, it's not a matter of we don't think your category or your, you know, fandom is worthy. That's not the case. It's just we got to go with what's universally looked at as this niche rather than just this handful of outliers.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you know your fourth match then was
My fourth match was Elena.
Was
And then
Elena.
I think sometime after that, I think Wingblade was first and then Travis.
okay. So you had your match against Wingblade, and you and I've already mentioned it on previous episodes. You and I actually worked together to help you study for the Wingblade match.
Yep. Absolutely.
And what is insane is I believe it was the night before, if not the night before, very
like 1 or 2 nights before. Yeah.
very very close. We talked about Lord of the Rings, and
Yes, we
I
did.
actually brought up Theodred.
Yes, you did.
I brought up Theodred, and I cannot believe that at no point did either one of us mention his horse. And when they asked that question, I was like, "Oh no, we talked about Theodred. I didn't mention Brago. Does he know this? Does he remember this?"
No, and I didn't. And I'm like, because you look back at it, and because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the movies, he's only ever mentioned twice. And even then, it's in the extended editions, not the theatrical cuts.
Sure.
Because they only, like, I know his name is only mentioned in the Two Towers when Arwen's got her little, like, voiceover thing going with Aragorn after he falls off the cliff.
Yeah.
But then the only other time his name is mentioned is in the extended cut of Return of the King when he's running away from the Path of the Dead.
Okay.
And I'm just like, I went back and I researched that after the fact, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But again, that's why it was a 5-pointer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know, here's the thing. I went through a point in my life where I was living in housing for a ministry that I was working at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we were very limited on the things we were allowed to watch.
Right.
And the house that I was living in literally had, I think, Finding Nemo and like maybe one other thing. And I had my own copies of the Lord of the Rings,
trilogy.
No, it was the trilogy, but it was the director's cut, the full,
right, the extended edition.
The extended editions. Yeah. And so I watched those and the background discs.
Commentary.
Yeah, all of that stuff. Like I watched all of it. So I knew those types of things. And I just when we were studying, I did not think, because I was like, I remember when I thought of the Theodred question, I was like, oh, this is something that might come up. I want to make sure and you got it. And I don't know why I didn't then bring up the horse.
Yeah. And trust me, I guarantee you, like during the match, you were probably screaming at your TV, and it's like,
well, honestly, no more. I was just like, oh crap, we didn't talk about this. Does he know? Does he know?
Yeah.
Oh no,
because I remember
I saw the look on
had
your face, and I was like, oh, he doesn't know this.
Yeah,
oh,
when you had your IG match with Wingblade, because you had, or what I think it was with him.
Yeah,
where I think your question was about the voice of Optimus Prime, and I'm like, It's Peter Cullen. You should
And
know this.
We had talked about that, and it was literally at the top of my notes.
Yeah.
And I had it underlined and bolded and highlighted and everything. And I just did not look at my notes before the match.
I mean, to me, that sounds a lot like what happened with me with Travis, because like I saw the list of what was going on and I'm like, okay, Jennifer Lopez, in case I get stuck with this, I need to review this. I need to look over these. And I had looked over every single one of those movies that was up there. And the fact that I had to go to multiple choice on 2 of them, when I looked at it earlier that freaking day,
right? Yeah.
It was just like, come on.
Yeah.
And I like Travis, like, no disrespect. The guy is fantastic at movie trivia. Like, the guy's mind is like a steel trap. Yeah. But, like, just the handful of questions I missed in round 1, and then, like, that was just a bad day at the office.
Yeah.
That was the roughest match I think I'd had in the FCL. Was just like, I was so far off my game. It was not even funny.
Yeah. Yeah, so you had those, unfortunately, 2 losses in a row.
Yeah.
And then
my very last match was Brennan in the Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had 3 losses in a row.
Yeah, it was a rough 3 in a row. It was a rough 3 and out. It really was.
Yeah.
But the idea was, or at least in the back of my mind, I'm like, you know what? Okay, I'm out of this for at least a little while, but next year I can come back, redeem myself. Really hit the ground running. Take some time to study. And of course, obviously that didn't happen, but I wasn't too fixated on it. Like, yeah, it sucks that, my very last 3 matches were all in a row losses, but if nothing else, like, again, the old saying, iron sharpens iron. And then, to have that last match with Brennan, who is a fantastic Star Wars player, and I'm not just saying that because he's in the chat or anything like that. Like, he put my Star Wars knowledge to the test in a way that it never has been before.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the opportunity I had to play him. I'm honored that he was the one who actually claimed the Star Wars title. So, it was.
You played very well in that match. If it hadn't been, I believe Brennan went perfect. He might have missed maybe one.
I think there was like maybe one question that he and I both because I remember there was one question in round 1 that I got that he didn't.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, like, it came down to that very last question about Corday, the name of Padme's decoy in Attack of the Clones, and I was just like, okay, does he know this? Does he pay enough attention?
Well, because
and of course,
you and I had that discussion.
Yep.
In our study session. Yeah. So I knew you knew it, but I was like, man, why can't this be his question?
I know, like, there were so many, like, how, like, I still can't believe I missed the Sullust question. I still can't believe I missed the quote about, unwise to lower your defenses, this, that, and the other, because I remember that. I remember that so clearly. And
because that one shocked me because I knew that. And I was like, okay, for me to get something that James missed, I'm like, he's got to be in his head or something.
Yeah, it very much was a case of, like, the pressure kind of getting to me because, again, I remember that scene vividly. And after he said it, and I watched the scene back in my head, like in my mind, I'm like, fudge. It was such a moment of mental obscurity that I cannot forgive or defend.
But yeah, so you had those matches. Like I said, 7 matches. A good number of matches, especially because towards the end there they were using a lot of the same people. That's the main reason I got 4 matches, even though I didn't start till June.
Yeah, no, you were one of the very featured individuals, and I think you and I both can owe the fact that we had so many matches down to our character work, I think, because we were compelling characters. We were, regardless of how much knowledge maybe we did or didn't possess, we were entertaining.
Yeah, and that was my whole point. I was like, even if I suck at trivia, I want to be entertaining to the point where people want me to come back.
And that is what we call the Josh McCouga formula. If he's not watching this, but Josh, I'm a fellow Pittsburgh guy. Love you to death, man. Mazel tov.
Okay, so we've kind of talked about what was your time in the FCL, your career as it was,
as it were. Yeah.
but I want to talk about what might have been. We've already kind of danced around it. Now, obviously, there's season 2, but you and I, because we had our dealings with the Sinister Syndicate, there were a couple different people other than Maxwell who did eventually join us that were pitched, that you and I pitched, that were kind of whispered about. So I want to talk about what might have been in terms of even season 1, because we had some thoughts, some plans, even some things that they said we think this is going to happen, and then it ended up not happening.
They just fell through. An interesting one that I will bring out, because I don't even know if you know about this.
Okay.
There was a point where we all know where there was the announcement that Brad came out and said, "Look, I'm going to fight the Flirt and Flaccid Warfare, this, that, or the other."
Right.
Originally, it was supposed to be Booker T who got announced for that.
Right.
Well, that was the original thing, but Booker T didn't want to be a part of a bait and switch, which, all due respect to him, 5-time
totally
WCW champion, 2-time Hall of Famer. But in that point, PLD emails me and says, "Hey, can you get together with Travis and put a little video together saying like, hey, and it basically was just me laying out like the kind of stuff that had happened and the quote unquote travesties that had happened to him up to this point, playing off of his nickname.
Yeah.
And then just laying like, and now, you should clearly be the one to face the Flirt and Flash, but yet instead Brad's ego has let it get the best of him and this and that. And just like, relax, sit back, don't worry about a thing. We'll take care of everything. Basically hinting at the fact that, hey, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. And then there was that bit at the end of Warfare where you just see me closing the laptop and just kind of, sitting there like, the evil finger pyramid of contemplation thing.
Yeah.
But but the fact is that prior to that vignette was supposed to have aired and it never did. They never ended up airing it.
Oh,
which was so disappointing. Because I'm like, that would have been a fun little just like tease and drop and this and that.
Sure.
So
I know you mentioned to me that got filmed, but you weren't really sure like where it might lead, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I still have a copy of it somewhere, but it's like it was. I was so hopeful for that. But then,
I will say if you're allowed to, send me that, or feel free to post it yourself, and I'll. I was
gonna say, I don't think any of us have any contracts with them anymore, so like there's no NDA or like non-compete or anything. So I can send it to you in private.
Yeah,
but so there was that, and I know at one point, Brennan Marr had intimated that maybe he would want to join the Sinister Syndicate.
And,
so
and we talked about that in his episode. Yeah. Of course, I mean, Brennan's whole thought was that he would kind of be the odd man out.
Right. Just the so pure-hearted and this and that. It's like, why is he with us again? Like,
yeah. Which, I mean, honestly could have been interesting, but that eventually there would have been a split.
Eventually, yeah. And then again, like I mentioned before with David Jandoian, like there was the idea that either he would be press ganged into joining or be.
Which honestly, I love that idea. I really
it would have been fun. It was like very, very much John Cena Nexus circa 2010 kind of situation.
Yeah.
So there was that. And then there were a handful of like other people that I just off the top of my head can't remember necessarily because I do
know one of them.
Go ahead,
Chris Adams.
Right. Yes. Because
the gentleman Chris Adams.
Yeah. Because of that whole thing.
Because you actually told me that you were pretty sure that was going to happen.
Yeah. Because I think they brought that up and it's just like, it would have been a situation of like, hey, either he couldn't get the job done against his brother or he ended up getting the job done. And it's like, see what happens when you listen to me. See what happens when we work together. Yeah. Like there were so many different ways that we could have gone with that. And like there, again, it's just to think about it, my creative brain going back and thinking about all the things that could have sparked from that and where it could have led. Just,
well, because here's the thing, I talked to Wingblade in the last episode. And he told me how that, he was probably one of the most annoying, which honestly, David Campbell also argued that he felt like he was the most annoying, but constantly pitching things to PLD.
Yeah.
Well, here's my thing. I was afraid of being that person. So you were the person that I pitched to before I would pitch to PLD.
Yeah, no. I mean, and that's the thing is like you never like obviously you want to pitch your own ideas. You want to because again, it kind of comes like anybody who performs in this kind of a situation who does this kind of stuff. In the back of your mind, you can be honest and humble and this and sincere and this and that, but you've probably got a little bit of an ego in the back. But it's not out of wanting to make yourself into a star necessarily, but it's about what maybe could develop between whoever you end up working with, who else you can build, who else you can, give the rub to use, a wrestling term, because a push necessarily for you, if let's say you put it together, the other person shows out, that results in a push for them. So there's any kind of different things that could have happened there. And it wasn't an idea of none of the ideas that we ever pitched or anything that we kind of came up with was meant solely to get us over. It was meant as a way to build anybody that we just happen to be in orbit around.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was more just like, I think that the fans would enjoy this kind of thing. Or,
this would be just a fun one-off. Or what if this storyline kind of came about? Or what if, this kind of a moment ended up happening or this or that? Like, it was never about just us. It was about what could develop from it, who else could benefit from it, and where storylines could go based off of that one moment.
Well, I know there was, it doesn't really, again, it's years ago, so it doesn't really matter. But I know at one point I had pitched to you because there was a guy in the FCL who came in, I believe his name was Gerald Battaglia or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
I remember Gerald.
And was one of the first big names mentioned, within, possible championship type of realms. He'd been very, very impressive in his first couple of matches. Well, he only had like 2 or 3 matches in the FCL. And then apparently they agreed because the Schmodown, I believe, Kaiser called him up. I believe
so, yeah. Called him up, yeah.
But then never got to use it.
Yeah. It was just,
for one reason or another. So I pitched to you because I think by the time I came in, it was pretty obvious that they weren't going to be able, because it was coming up to tournament time.
Yeah,
I was like, they're not going to use him.
Ultimate Showdown, yeah.
Let's see if we could bring him in to the Sinister Syndicate. So it was
like disenfranchised, just cast away kind of thing. It's like you bring me in to discard me, you dangle that carrot in front of my face, and then you just snatch me away. Well, guess what?
Who would have had a bigger? Yeah, exactly. Just kind of pissed off. I was like, that would have been a great. And I pitched it to you. I know you probably pitched it, and they just.
I think I may have made like a passing mention of it, but I think like just for whatever reason, like contractually or like whatever was going on, like it just things just.
I was about to say it probably was harder to bring him back down than it was
probably
to bring.
But I mean, that's the risk you run.
Yeah. But yeah. So I mean, honestly, I don't really remember for sure anybody else that we talked about in the Sinister Syndicate. I mean, there were definitely, we had, people that we would have liked to join us.
There were a plethora of people that we would have either liked to have had join the Syndicate or feud with us or anything like that. The one, and again, because we're both wrestling guys, the one thing we definitely wanted to avoid was becoming the NWO. Like getting too many guys in too quick.
Yeah, but we both were like 4 or 5 tops.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would have loved to see Brennan make it up to the Schmodown guard.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Star Wars League, This is just a fun little thing for me.
Yeah.
Coming up at our local Comic-Con will be a former Schmodown competitor will be there. The former Star Wars champion, Sam Witwer.
Oh,
So yeah,
nice.
he'll be hanging around. So I'm curious to see if he's watched any FCL, if maybe he recognizes me or anything when I go to meet him. Probably won't.
Probably not.
Probably not, but I'll bring it up to him.
What I
we'll
have
a nice
seen
laugh.
of the last couple times people mentioned the Schmodown to him, I think the poor guy was a little assaulted with that.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
He wasn't a fan of the constant question.
Fair enough.
Which I get. I get.
No. I get it.
Yeah.
But it's just like, hey, loved your work. Loved you on the Schmodown. Have a nice day. That would have been it. Yeah, that's more than likely all I'll get from him. I plan to get autograph picture, this, that, and the other, just kind of fun and just maybe get some advice on voice acting. I probably won't mess with him on the Schmodown thing too much.
Yeah. But yeah, so obviously when you did actually tell me that we were getting Maxwell.
Yeah.
I was just like, any thought I had of anybody else, I was like, oh, we got Maxwell, we're good, we're covered.
Yeah. But
I immediately was like, we're gonna have all the belts. I was like, he's gonna get the singles. He and I are gonna get the teams when that's a thing.
Yeah. It's funny when you bring that up, because it's like weird, because everybody loved to make the joke, especially in the chat. Like, when you came into the Sinister Syndicate, you ate an L the very next match you had. When Max came in, he ate an L the very next match. I'm like, okay, make your jokes, blah, blah, blah.
I will say, I think my first match, I guess they announced it during my cat match. It was
after your cat
match,
yes.
Right, it was right after.
Yeah.
But we'd already been talking, so I already kind of felt like I was part of the Sinister Syndicate. It just wasn't announced yet.
Yeah, but it was like the very next match after that video dropped.
Yeah,
you took an L, and it was just like,
but I played Wingblade.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
it's Wingblade, for crying out loud.
Yeah. I went into that match basically just saying, I just hope he doesn't knock me out. So
yeah. Then let's face it, like, there's so many different avenues. Like Wingblade, great competitor, loved playing against him. Really,
absolutely,
really caused me to up my game. And if I wish we'd had an opportunity to run that match back again and like compete for the actual title. I felt like that was a huge missed opportunity, but is what it is.
Yeah.
So.
But obviously we had those plans during season 1, but like as far as season 2, like, did you already have storylines formulated? I guess let you know what, that actually could be a long question. So let's start with your wish list of people that you wanted to play, even if they weren't even in the FCL yet. Who was on your wish list for the first few people to play in season 2?
Oh man, David Campbell, number 1, was one of the big ones. I would have loved to have gotten a shot at Reifenberg after he lost the Star Wars title.
Sure,
that would have been great. Again, Wingblade definitely was on my radar, as was Kat. Before they announced their retirement, I wanted to play against either Robert, Vanessa, or both.
Right.
Because those two are just fantastic people. Really good folks. Love what they're doing with their channel. Keep up the good work. And just like, really, it was my mindset going into season 2 was, hey, whoever you want to throw me in the ring with, do it. Because
agreed.
I saw myself as a utility player in the FCL. Someone you could throw in a match in any division when you had a need to fill a spot and would put on the best show that he could. And, that was my attitude every match that I went into. Doesn't matter if I win or lose, just put in a good show, make the crowd hate you, which is my job as a heel, and have fun. And I accomplished all 3 of those things every single time I stepped in the ring. So,
agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. Now, as far as like ideas of where things could have gone, like I
Right.
said, there was still stuff to be mined from the whole David Jindoian thing.
Yeah.
Would have loved to have gotten you and Max into some team stuff because I know we had talked about that for the longest time.
Yep.
Really wanted to again nail my focus into Star Wars and Inner Geekdom.
Yep.
Because in my mind, I would have been the guy holding, both belts
Double
over
belt.
his shoulder.
Yeah.
Yep. Star Wars on one shoulder, Inner Geekdom on the other. And again, maybe that's my ego, but at least it's a goal for God's sake.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, and again, whether or not that was achievable or not, it is what it is. And eventually, I would have loved to have played if circumstances had worked out to where the Schmodown had kept going, like eventually maybe in an exhibition or, I could have seen myself maybe in a free-for-all kind of situation or, let's say you put the IG champs of each division against one another, something like that. Like I had so many different ideas that we could have done in so many different things. And again, whether or not that jived with what, Brad and PLD wanted to do or what Christian wanted to do, was up for debate. But at least, if nothing else, I was at least trying to bring something to the table to get some kind of entertainment value.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, you mentioned I would have done the free for all in a second.
Absolutely.
I mean,
make it happen down in Atlanta, 3-hour drive from my house. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you and I both talked about because that was one of the potential places for live events, definitely pitching, let's make something happen there. That would be great.
Or if nothing else, even if we didn't get involved in the live event or anything, just make an entrance down the aisle, just you and me, just like hanging some popcorn, grabbing a seat, just kicking our feet up and just watching the action. Like, why are they here? What are they doing?
About to say, if I hadn't been given a match or something, I still would have shown up in full face paint.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like that, and that's just you. Like that's your thing.
Yeah. If for nothing else than just to, as you said, cause questions like what's
exactly
going on there?
It could have very much been like a Scott Hall, Kevin Nash thing back when WCW circa 96. It's just like, why are they here? What are they doing? What's the purpose of all this?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's see. I mean, is there anything else, any other, future plans or anything that you were like, oh, I really wanted this to happen or anything like that?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Like it would have been cool to be in like a singles title match, but again, my record didn't really speak for that. And, I like playing singles well enough, but like my bread and butter has always been Inner Geekdom and Star Wars. So those two would have been my focus. A rematch with Brennan for the title would have been nice. Again, getting that rematch with Wingblade if it had been a title match or even like I said, a Four Corners thing. Yeah. Whatever. Or even, eventually if and when the time was right for a Sinister Syndicate split, I
was about to say, I always felt like at some point I was going to end up having to play you, whether it was part of a split storyline or just, maybe like the rumblings or, I mean, there weren't a whole lot of IG competitors.
No, there weren't. Like there was, like I said, there was me, Wingblade, Cat, you, and there were like one or Elena, and then like maybe one or two others, and that was about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I felt like it was, and I mean, as you mentioned, we had the same record. So I wouldn't have been surprised if.
No, it definitely would have been a thing. And
I mean, I feel like it might have been like part of storyline,
Where, like maybe
where they're like, let's put these two together, see if the Sinister Syndicate can hold.
Yeah, and I could have gone to Brad Rage, and it's just like, dude, what gives? You put two members of the Sinister Syndicate against one another, but then again, regardless of how the match turned out, one of us to the other, it's like, hey, nice job throwing that match. Way to give me an up. And that way, everybody comes out smelling like roses to where we don't lose any heat, we don't lose any, real, momentum out of it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I will say. And I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but I had pitched because you and I were really one of the first faction mates.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned it to you and I even mentioned it to PLD. I was like, it would be great if I could like come on as his like manager
Yeah.
during, post and intro interviews, just to kind of show that there's solidarity kind of thing. They had
Yeah.
never ended up doing that, but I had so many ideas for that.
And that's the thing is like, you can spitball ideas, but until you're like, for example, like if you're, just a fan of the Schmodown or anything like that, and you see what's playing out and you start spitballing and fantasy booking and this, that, and the other. But when you're an actual competitor in there and you see like the quality that's there and you see like what, like whose personalities, you can work best off of and this, that, and the other. And again, it's not a matter of how can I make myself look better, but how can we collectively, look better as either competitors, as teammates, as however it works. How can we raise everybody's stock at once rather than just one person at a time?
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, endless possibilities that we had with this. Unfortunately, it didn't happen there, but who's to say that something won't happen down the line? Like I said, untapped potential. But I do always like to, give, my guests the opportunity to talk about what is, what you might have going on. Just kind of let people know a little bit about what you're doing now and where they can find you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I'm not really doing much in the way of movie trivia. Life has kind of taken a new focus, with living where I am now, with my responsibilities as a father, as a teacher. I'm actually going back to school right now to get my master's degree, so that's going to take up a good chunk of my time.
Yeah.
But I still do watch movies. I'm actually working on a new podcast network right now. It's called the Shimo Media Network. I'll be doing my usual Wrestling Ramblings and Rages podcast with my two buddies Ryan and Brenton. I'll also be doing my own movie podcast where I talk about either upcoming movies that are already out, the state of the movie business, like what's going on now with the writer's strike. I'm also working on a book on how tabletop gaming in particular, is effective at teaching skills that most kids aren't getting in the public school system here in the United States much anymore. So there's that going on. So I've got a lot of different irons and a lot of different fires. So it's just a matter of what I decide to start working on at any particular point. But as far as where you can find me on Twitter at Shimo James. That's SHIMO JAMES. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all of that stuff under Shimo Media Network. Just look that up and you'll find the artwork. And give any of my podcasts a listen. Hope to hear from you. And, like I mentioned before, if Mr. Flying Cow here wants to expand his movie trivia division, you might catch me in an episode or two, whether as a commentator or as a competitor.
Yeah. All right. Well, as James said, you can find us on the social medias. You can find me at the Flying Cow Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can also email me at theflyingcowpod@gmail.com. You can check out all of the various podcasts that I have over on The Flying Cow. We've got Discussions, our Disney podcast. We've got Nostalgia Cow, where we talk about entertainment from our childhoods. The Flying Cow's Movie List, where myself or a guest watch a movie that one of us has never seen. We've got The Academy coming back, which is, of course, the podcast where we take a specific year and talk about the, quote, best films from that year and decide what we believe is the best film. We are talking this time about the year 1930. So make sure to check that out. We've already recorded the first episode of that. So that will be coming out, I believe, next month in June. So it'll be a summer project. Also, as James said, make sure to check out everything else we have on YouTube, the live stream, this FCL Flashback, as well as movie battles, the Disney Pixar animation movie trivia show. We got 2 seasons of that over there, so make sure to check that out. We also have my patreon.com/theflyingcow, where you can find all sorts of exclusive things, as well as the Patreon exclusive podcast Around the World, where we talk all things Ernest P. Worrell. So you can check that out. But James, again, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hey, happy to be here anytime, man. Thanks for having me. Always great to sit and chat with a good buddy.
Absolutely. Also want to thank everybody who watched live, as well as will watch on the replay. Hope you enjoyed it. I will be back next time talking with somebody about, the FCL. But until then, mood.
Mm.